sucked! In the early 80s, fighting games as we know them weren't really a thing yet. Sure, one could find examples of them that could technically fit into the modern definition, but they were so divorced from the conventions of what we hold fighting games to be nowadays that they only really serve as footnotes leading up to the true beginning of the genre. Street Fighter 1! Oh, this game is fucking ain't as juice. In its defense, its graphics were considered standout at the time, and it actually implemented an extremely rough and crude version of a buffering system that would later be refined in its bigger dick sequel, Street Fighter 2. It really fucks me up that they're on the same hardware. When talking of the development of the genre and this pivotal point in its life, it's suggested to note the year World Warrior released, 1991. This way we have a frame of reference for what fighting games as we know them should at least try to emulate. However, I would argue a lot of the appeal of Street Fighter 2 has waned as time has passed, especially for someone like me who played it, picked up First Strike, and was like, ooh, why my pee-pee hard? The actual sprite work in Street Fighter 2, at least in its early days, is pretty rough, buddy. Bunch of pillow shading, strange lighting choices making everybody look tubby. However, the one thing that is used marvelously if we're talking visuals is the stages. The stages in Street Fighter 2 are classic. They're so ingrained in the fighting game zeitgeist, I'm convinced Ryu mains go to Suzaku Castle when they die. Alongside the actual sprite quality still holding up fairly well by modern standards, a fucking 30-year jump, mind you. The actual parallax of the stages is still fairly solid, and they only got better with later iterations. Later, Capcom would release the CPS-2, essentially a supercharged version of its older brother with substantially stronger encryption that was only really cracked a little over a decade ago, long after they stopped making games for it. For this, I'm going to take a look at one of the earliest titles on this fledgling system. While most talk about Darkstalkers, and they rightfully should, it's fucking awesome, I'm going to take this opportunity to sing the praises of a lesser played title, and definitely an underrated one, X-Men Children of the Atom. Long story short, a dude Capcommunist really enjoyed X-Men, and would even translate some of the comics for his co-workers to read. They all dug it so much they approached Marvel in the hopes of gaining the rights to make a fighting game on them, which obviously happened. While admittedly the gameplay takes a bit to get used to. Oh man, this game is fucking hot! The sprite work, the animation, the detail, the music, it's tasty! But you can read titles. What I'm going to do here is share a couple of small details about stages. A more sidelined aspect of fighting games I feel needs to come back hard. Because, to be honest, most stages these days, kinda lame, not gonna lie. But these were cool as fuck. They each fit the character beautifully, and each did at least some cool shit that's still uncommon even nowadays. So grab a little snack, and I hope you like pixel art as much as I do, because I'm going to spend the next little while essentially gushing about how good this game's stages look. Gonna start off strong. This is probably the most famous stage out of this game, because it's one of the few that people actually reference outside of the game. So, this is Cyclops' stage, otherwise known as the Danger Room. In essence, the Danger Room is... It's basically this massive chamber the X-Men use in order to prepare for combat situations, right? So, like, you know, you can practice against, like, holographic enemies and, you know, learn their powers or practice your own shit. You know, it's a training stage, right? It's like the coolest training stage in human history, okay? That's all you really need to know. Now, the obvious thing that you can plainly see from, you know, eyes is that it constantly morphs depending on, like, what's happening during the fight. But there's actually 4 variations of the stage. There's the initial one that you start out with. There's one that looks like it's in the middle of, like, a void, like in space or something. There's one in the midst of a forest or jungle or fucking bloodline, you know what I mean? And there's one underwater with holographic wildlife and all that. All of that is fairly easy to see, but the one thing that isn't easy to see, and I think is really, really fucking cool, is if you persistently dash, little lasers will fire at the character that's dashing, implying they're using that for training and shit. That's so cool! That's like not in another fighting game stage, and I don't know why. It's cool as fuck. Colossus' stage is pretty cool in the sense that it starts off fairly simple. It's just this basic highway. But after colliding with certain moves that cause the opponent to smash against the ground, eventually the floor will just break apart, and you guys will land on a boat on a riverway. Overlooking this riverway is a bunch of destroyed city, including a downed Sentinel. Oh, that stuff is fairly obvious. but there's also a bunch of like little soldiers that are wandering about, maybe looking for mutants or something. And there's also this creepy-ass Sentinel just walking around back there. I don't like him. Owner of the least fitting character theme in all of fighting games, Omega Red's stage, kind of like Storm's, doesn't have a ton to say, but the one thing it does have to say is it's in this sort of aqua elevator type thing, constantly going down. And you can see a bunch of cool stuff in the background, such as various marine life, some underground infrastructure type thing. And after a while, when you get as far as the elevator will go, it'll stop working. You motherfuckers are stuck down here. You guys are fucked. Psylocke's stage is kind of neat. Essentially, for the first round, the two players are stuck on this conveyor belt type thing that constantly fluctuates between the first and second floor. Oh, you can also destroy these massive beams, that's pretty neat. On every subsequent round, the lift will go higher up and eventually overlook this massive cityscape on the rooftop. Which, by the way, individually, just like, oh, God, it's so pretty. Okay, this is probably my favorite stage detail in the game. Sentinel's stage takes place in the center of a massive Sentinel construction factory, with what appears to be Master Mold in the background. Master Mold, for those who don't know, he's essentially a Sentinel, but he's the biggest, dickest version of a Sentinel, right? Like, there are stories in X-Men where they're just like, we need to stop Master Mold from being built, because if he comes into being, we are fucked, right? Like, Master Mold is, you don't fuck with Master Mold. Anyway, so the cool thing is on the stage, if you beat Sentinel, check it out! Master Mold is destroyed, and he falls away. But if Sentinel wins the fight, that is unreasonably sick. Now, the fact that Spiral is in this game at all is kind of astounding. I've not met many people who even know who Spiral is, but weirdly enough, they gave her one of the coolest stages in this game. And it helps that her sprites are genuinely really cool too. This stage actually has 4 levels to it. Certain moves will cause the ground to crack. Any 2 moves that cause this effect will cause it to break, and for the character to move down to a lower level. You can go down 3 levels until you can't move down anymore. The other cool thing is there's this massive statue of Mojo. Long story short, sick fuck, really likes everything to be televised. He's all like, ratings, baby! That kind of thing. And the statue actually follows the players around during the fight, which is kind of funny. It makes me think that, there's, a hidden camera in there, and he's trying to, get the best shots. Now, I love this stage, and it probably has my favorite music of any of the stages. There's not a ton to say about it, but this little fact is cute. There's actually 3 times of day on this stage. There's dusk, night, and dawn. Which one you get is random, but I think they all look kinda nice. That's all there is really to say, it's just a generally solid stage. Oh, and there are birds in the dusk version. That's cute. This music makes me want to shoot myself. It doesn't have a ton going on, but it's got a thing here or there that's kinda cute. After the first round, the ice cap will break off and float away for a bit into the ocean. As it does, you can see a lot of water animation. It's very pretty. It's very nice. Some people on surfing equipment and all that, having a bit of fun. It's kind of cool. Eventually, you'll come to a boat with a couple of ladies on it, and by then it'll just chill by there. And that's all there really is when it comes to transitioning. But something that I think will give Guilty Gear Strive players a bit of PTSD. Love this stage. I suppose the point of this video was to just show some of the cool shit that was in these games, and to get people thinking about the cool stuff that could be possible in fighting game stages. You don't really see this kind of thing anymore. And I think that's a fucking shame. Because keep in mind, this came out in 1994, 3 years after Street Fighter 2, and it does all this crazy, wacky, beautiful shit. I don't know, I think it's kind of mental that this game is 27 years old, and you don't really see any of this kind of thing anymore. So, I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe implement some of this stuff in your Mugen creations, I don't know. Maybe just study the older fighting games and just appreciate all the cool little details that this game has. Because just because it's old doesn't mean it's bad. I would recommend giving this game a shot. It's a bit weird to play, but hey, you know, it came out 27 years ago. Give it some slack, come on. That being said, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. All the best, have a good day, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed this.